Welcome to This Just In, the show bringing you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. And now, for the fastest voice in healthcare, here's your host, Justin Barnes.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special edition of This Just In Radio. I'm your host, Justin Barnes. Today, we're broadcasting live from ViVE25 in Nashville. Very excited to be here. The prominence of this specific show grows every year, and I feel very fortunate to be able to broadcast annually from this event. Rich Scarfo and the entire ViVE, Chime, and Health team have been extremely supportive, and I'm tremendously grateful. Also, a special note of thanks to Dan Kendall and the Health Podcast Network for his support in managing the demands of my ViVE broadcast and all of the recordings. Also, Roberta Mullen, the entire team at Healthcare Now Radio. I'm certainly grateful for all of you. This is my 11th year broadcasting from a healthcare industry conference, and these teams help make every show and every broadcast better. That's how we won the Sway Health 2024 Healthcare Podcast of the Year Award. For today, though, I have a fantastic lineup of CEOs, CIOs, care providers, policy leaders, and visionaries. As many of you know, my goal for broadcasting live each year from these key conferences is to create an information medium that shares best practices, strategies, and actionable intelligence from the industry's leading sources and experts. My goal, along with all my guests here, will be to offer tactics and strategies to not only survive, but to thrive as you navigate your hospital, your practice, your company, your family, all through these changes occurring in healthcare today. There's more opportunity than ever before for all of us to thrive, but we must understand how healthcare is evolving, how policy and reimbursement is shifting, and where best practice and innovation can support our efforts. I hope you glean all of that over the next few days. That's at least my goal. Thank you very much, everybody, and stay tuned. Welcome back to This Just In Radio Show, broadcasting live from ViVE 2025 in Nashville. I'm very excited to introduce my next guest and great friend of the show, Dr. Rasu Shrestha, Chief Innovation and Commercialization Officer and Executive Vice President at Advocate Health. A big welcome back to the show, my good friend. How are you?
Well, thank you, Justin. It's a pleasure to be here amidst what might be a snowy Nashville, Tennessee.
I know. When do you fly out?
I fly out, unfortunately, tomorrow, right after my irony of all ironies, a panel on climate innovation.
Gosh, right. The snow's coming down and ending.
Right. Well, a climate event. And,
exactly.
All right, there you go.
So, let's start off with something positive. What are you most excited about seeing in the industry today?
So lots that I'm excited about,
Good.
to be quite honest.
Yep.
I mean, amidst the uncertainties that we're swimming in right now, lots that I'm excited about. The thing that I'm most excited about is the fact that we've, I think, finally moved beyond the hype cycle of AI to where we're seeing like real substance coming out of AI and Gen AI, and I'm super excited. As a radiologist with background, I'm super excited about that. AI for impact, right? You think about ambient AI and voice, and even within the imaging world, where you've got over 80% or so, I think was the number that I heard the other day, of FDA approved applications are in imaging, and we're seeing amazing embrace of just AI for impact versus AI because AI, right. So we'll move beyond the hype cycle is what I think.
Yeah, I was actually at the session yesterday morning. Our friend Kamal had, and I think you helped sponsor part of that or showcase part of that, and they actually talked about ambient AI and what it's bringing. I think it was Vanderbilt and one of the other health systems, but fantastic.
Yeah.
So what digital health trends are you seeing in the industry today?
Yeah, so I could respond and say AI for every one of your questions,
I know.
Today.
Yeah.
I am super excited about, and I'll maybe give you just a different spin than what your listeners might be hearing, around robotics. Super excited about this, right? And we're investing in a big way around robotics and experiential learning, and it does embrace AI in how it is that we're pushing forward with the science and the art of minimally invasive surgery. So if you just take a step back, right, the way that we've been doing surgery for the longest time since surgery was a thing, right, has been where you go into, a hospital and there's a massive incision and, say a cholecystectomy, right, where you're removing a gallbladder, and you're, admitted in the hospital for a couple of days, and, and then eventually you get discharged with a scar, but also the number of days that you're in the hospital also correlates to opportunities of infection, and the outcomes may be questionable. And so I'm not questioning the science of cholecystectomies, but what I am saying is the new way of doing things is really leveraging the power of robotics and AI and experiential learning. And so that's what I'm super excited about. Now you've got 3 1-centimeter incisions, you insert chopsticks with cameras and AI and robots, and you're out basically that evening. And the outcomes are so much better, costs are less, and experience is so much better as well. So when I think about sort of the quadruple aim, the opportunities around robotics, and embracing, again, that intentional embrace of AI and experiential learning, which is part of what we're pushing forward with as we open up what's called ERCAD North America, the destination center for robotics and minimally invasive surgery, and
that's right,
and all of that. So I'm super excited about this. We're betting big on this, and I think that's going to really redefine some of how we do surgery in years to come.
So you're open the center. So what are a few best practices or strategies to help others navigate the robotics or other trends that you're seeing out there?
Yeah. So I'd say 2 things. One is really the power of ecosystems.
Absolutely.
And tied to that really is partnerships done right. Right. I think healthcare is too darn hard and too darn complex for any one of us, any entity to be trying to solve it on their own. And we've been very intentional in creating those ecosystems, whether it's in the Innovation Quarter up in Winston-Salem, where just last year alone, $1.66 billion of economic impact came out of IQ, or the Pearl, which we're going live with this year. I'm super excited about
that announcement.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And the new medical school and the Experience Center and ERCAD North America that I just referenced will all be part of phase 1 of the rollout of the Pearl. So the power of ecosystems, and then again, partnerships done right. And I'd say, sort of surrounding all of that, just enveloping all of that is this focus. I think, in this day and age of where, again, we're hit with so many challenges.
Focus, you got it.
Focus, I think, is really, critical. It's this abject level of focus and saying, all right, how do we have that level of, again, word of the year for me is intentionality, right? How do you have that level of intentionality and focus in your priorities and what you're deprioritizing or what you're saying no to, but also how you're then executing to those priorities. I think that's really critical.
It's excellent. Who are some of the partners? We have a couple extra seconds here. So what are some of the partners that you're most excited about or that you really have supported creating those ecosystems? Yeah,
so we've announced, as we've now launched ERCAD North America, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Advocate Health, and I'm super excited about this, and the fact that we also have exclusivity over all of North America is a big deal. But with that being what I've called the super magnet for the Pearl, right? It's then attracted partners like Siemens. Siemens is a level 1, top-tier partner of ours in ERCAD North America, and a number of other things that we're doing. Stryker, also a top-tier partner of ours. And as you think about, all of the different elements of not just robotics, but also AI and data and really pushing things forward in really innovative ways. Boston Scientific, another partner that we just announced. Again, amazing things that we're doing around ERCAD North America, but also in things like Close the Gap, really around looking at gaps that exist in ways that we're managing cardiovascular ailments across not just metropolitan cities like Charlotte and Chicago, but also rural America and such. So super excited about these partnerships, and there's more that'll be announced in months to come.
Congratulations. So what are some of your goals? Obviously you're on a lot of panels, you're sharing a lot of wisdom and thought leadership, but what are some of your other goals for here before you fly out?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I've noticed ViVE this year maybe less foot traffic than prior years. I don't know. I've not done.
It does seem a little different. It does.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
But I see a positive to that, and what I've experienced and ties back to my goal is again more intentional quality dialogue. Right. So again, much like what we say in medicine, it's value, not volume.
Yep.
But I'm able to sit down with the right CEOs. I'm able to sit down and really have the right conversations and removing barriers and talking about investments and moving things forward in more intentional ways versus just bumping up against everyone, which we do. We still do. I think there's still a good critical mass of that at ViVE.
But we do have a great quality group here, absolutely, this year.
Absolutely.
So,
and I think the dialogue on the main stage has been remarkable.
Yes.
Remarkable. And yesterday I was on the main stage talking about cancer and Cancer X and the things that we're doing.
Yep.
in really rethinking how we address all of that, especially with Gen AI and partnerships and clinical trials and all that. And immediately after that, I was on at the rock and roll stage talking about prior auths and what we need to do to solve for that. Given the big focal point that we had with the Brian Thompson murder, right? I think prior auths has really come to a crescendo in terms of how do we address that, right? How do we make sure that we're able to leverage the power of, say, AI?
You got it.
And really, in my mind, prior auths as it exists today really needs to go away. And there are a bunch of other things that we can talk about, but super excited about those opportunities. So real dialogue.
Yeah. No, actually, prior auth has been part of my every single week. Well, the last 4 weeks, every week, a new company has come to me. Either they're just starting or they're, maybe a year along in their innovation, trying to solve issues in prior auth.
Yeah.
So, opportunities and create opportunities in prior auth, because it's such a bottleneck. It literally is a part of my conversation every week now. Thinking beyond today, what do you see as a key strategy trend that we must be ready to navigate in 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, so a couple of things I'm really excited about. Again, in the spirit of focus and intentionality, as I was saying earlier, we are being very intentional in launching what we're calling our National Center for Clinical Trials. It's a platform around clinical trials, really pulling together the best of who we are at Advocate Health now as the third largest not-for-profit health system, the second largest academic medical center in the country. And we're saying, all right, look, I've always said the bigger we get, the more nimble and agile and innovative we have to be. And that goes against the grain of bigness.
Absolutely.
Right? That is not how big happens.
Correct. That's not how big happens for sure.
Yeah. And so, but we've been intentional around it, right? Again, intentionality. And we've, for example, we've now created a singular IRB, one IRB, 70 hospitals, over 1,000 care sites, 162,000 employees across multiple different states, but one IRB.
That's it.
Right.
That's
so all
impressive.
of that's then feeding into the National Center for Clinical Trials. So super excited about how we rethink the clinical trials paradigm. Today, it's a thing that's sort of a last resort for patients. And you've tried every other option, and here's this innovative clinical trial. How about you sign up for that? And then the access issue is a big deal because you only get access to these trials if you're near a NCI designated cancer institute or tertiary care center or a big metropolitan city like Charlotte or Chicago or whatnot. And our goal with standing up the National Center for Clinical Trials is to make clinical trials really just another care modality. Right, it's just available and accessible early and often and right there, and then leveraging the right algorithmic capabilities to clinical trial opportunities, pharma, right, CROs, and then bringing it back with real world evidence, real world data back into the clinical workflow, which I think is then going to really push the execution of these clinical trials into how it makes a difference in the outcomes of our patients and our clinical trial recruits the right way.
Absolutely. And that feeds obviously Advocate extremely well. The whole family there. Will some of that also then go out into the community though? I mean, you'll share some of those best practices, you'll share some of that research and
absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So that's a big area of focus for us is not just in the growth markets like Charlotte and other areas, but really across the board in the Southeast and Midwest. And as we continue to grow in Advocate Health, rural health is a big area of focus for us.
Good.
And we think that with the way that we're being intentional in terms of clinical trials and other elements, we can have tremendous impact in rural America, right? In Macon, Georgia, for example, right? We have our Atrium Health Navicent set of facilities, and then in Floyd, we have the Atrium Health Floyd, Rome, Georgia, right? Yeah. And what's interesting about rural America, it gets rural in Milwaukee and all of that as well, is in Wisconsin, is 95% of America is rural. So if you can solve for some of these elements in these test beds of Macon all the way to rural parts of Illinois and Wisconsin and such, and the Carolinas as well, then what you have is a formula for addressing some of the biggest gaps that exist in healthcare today across all of North America.
Congratulations. I love it. You're doing phenomenal work. God's work. Thank you so much, Rasu.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much, Justin. Pleasure. Yeah, great.
Welcome back to This Justin Radio Show, broadcasting live from ViVE 2025 in Nashville. I'm very excited to introduce my next guest and great friend of the show, Dr. John Halamka, president of the Mayo Clinic platform. Welcome back, my good friend.
Well, always a pleasure to talk to you, because every year we gather at a conference to say, so what does it all mean?
Exactly. Well, it always works, and it works really well. So you've only been here for a couple of hours. You came in late last night. But are you liking what you see here? I know you do a lot of talking and speaking and all that.
So first, the vibe of ViVE,
yes.
if you will, is
Absolutely.
that these are entrepreneurs. These are smaller companies. These are early stage companies. And I think their challenge is differentiation. So when you see 50 agentic AI companies, you say, well, that's great, but who is going to buy a product and why? Mm-hmm. And who will be the platform, if you will, that offers certain kinds of functions, whether that's agents or radiology or quality or clinical decision support. So my job the last several hours has been walking the floor and trying to answer that question.
Excellent. What was the last session you just came from?
And so I was asked to go on stage and chat about the future of oversight, regulation, guidelines, guardrails, safety.
Yes, good.
Where will we see AI have impact? Because it's really important for all of us to just sort of cut through the buzzwords and ask, where's the value?
Right. Amen. Fantastic. So I'd like to start with something positive. So, and everything from you is always positive, but what progress are you most excited about seeing in the industry today?
So you know I've been doing this for 4 decades.
Yes.
Right? And I always describe my 4 decades as solving problems in technology, policy, and psychiatry.
Amen.
And what you're starting to see, and I was at the World Economic Forum in January, that there's an urgency in society to deal with low birth rates, aging societies, not enough doctors and nurses, not enough access to healthcare. So what I think is exciting is urgency to move forward. Partnerships and collaborations are easier than ever before. Technology largely solved, pretty ubiquitous. Policy still evolving, but perfect storm for innovation.
So you bring up a great point. Anish actually was my first guest today, and he talked about the importance of being on offense when it comes to come to these shows, but also as a strategy for health systems and in providers, because there's so much opportunity here. It's time we have a defensive posture, and we know that a lot in healthcare at times. But he said the importance of being on and going on the offensive. So what would you say to that? Because I think it dovetails what you just said about the opportunity and the need that we have to bring forth.
So does any doctor or nurse wake up saying, you know what I need today? More AI.
Right. No, they don't.
They say oh my, I have a business problem. I mean, this is a silly example, but in Massachusetts, there are 1,200 different summer camp forms. Now, today, a doctor or nurse takes time out of their day to fill out a summer camp form. Is that the best use of their time?
Not at all.
So how about this? What if there is agentic AI that just takes all, not only summer camp, but I mean, there are 100 other different kinds of forms that agentic AI could just do for you. Oh, that's a business problem to solve. Maybe you have margin pressure. Maybe you have access to specialty care challenges. Maybe you have burnout. So come to these shows and say, where is the thing that will solve my business problem?
Excellent. So what healthcare or digital health trends are you seeing in the industry? You just touched on some of it. What are you seeing out there?
Right. Well, and so, of course, at this particular conference, not only is agentic AI everywhere, but ambient listening.
Yes.
And ambient listening is good enough. I mean, what's interesting, Mayo co-developed with one of the vendors here an inpatient nursing ambient listening system with the notion the nurses shouldn't touch a keyboard during their shift. And you say, wow, because on average, a nurse spends 2 hours of every shift at the keyboard.
Right.
Oh, you mean you can spend time talking to the patient, engaging the family, and the charting is just automagic?
Yeah.
Now, again, it requires human nearby, human review, but it's getting the nurses more patient contact, more satisfaction, and less burnout. And at a time where nursing is a very competitive profession, saying, hey, come to our organization and the workflow will be better. That is a highlight.
That's exciting. So I was on I watched a panel yesterday morning, and it was from a large provider organization, and they talked about how they have ambient listen. They've implemented it well, I guess, throughout their facility. They did kind of the big bang approach, I guess. But there was an instance where they had to recall where the doctor said the patient did not say that. And so they went back to the system, and the doctor had a stethoscope in his ear and did not hear the patient when the patient did actually say what they thought they said. But the doctor said, no, he did not say that. And they went back and listened and said, it's because you had a stethoscope in your ear. You couldn't hear the patient say it.
Right.
And it was a great point. And the ambient listening picked it up. So it also allowed for better care in that regard as well.
Right.
And the provider, the clinician overall burnout is a significant issue in the industry. So.
But there's subtleties that every one of your listeners should know about. So imagine that in a chart we write alert and oriented times 3. So I say, hey, Justin, are you alert and oriented times 3? You won't have a clue what I'm talking about.
Absolutely true.
So I have to say, so what's your name? Do you know where you are? Do you know what date it is? And then the ambient listening turns that into the patient is alert and oriented times 3.
Okay.
So to understand, this is not transcription.
Right.
This is a way of taking our conversation and putting it into a formal chart. That takes work.
And that's obviously an example of Gen AI. I mean, that's generative AI at its core in some ways.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So I guess, and even building on that, so what are a few trends and or best practices would you say you'd advise our listeners and your peers out there to look at to navigate either Gen AI or as just some of these other topics you brought out?
So this may sound a bit like compliance lingo, but governance in your organization is incredibly important. So what Mayo does, anytime we have a business problem to solve with AI, we convene a group that looks at what are the mathematical characteristics and what are the clinical characteristics of the solution, and based on what we find, do we want to go forward or no? Because remember that 90% right is 10% wrong.
Right. That's
and
a good point.
Maybe that's okay if what you're doing is charting and it's human review. It's really not okay if it's medication workflow.
That's right.
Right? And so that governance decides where you proceed and where you don't. And I suspect the Joint Commission over time will start looking at how hospitals govern the adoption of these new tools.
That's fantastic. So I guess what would be some advice that you would give? Because I mean, governance is a big word for a lot of institutions, and sometimes they can tackle it well, and sometimes they cannot tackle it well. What's a good way to go about governance, certainly when it comes around AI and aspects like that for an organization?
Well, and again,
maybe a mid-sized facility that doesn't have the resources.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, is stratify your organization into maybe, are you an academic medical center, which you have data science and you have AI capabilities? Are you a large community hospital where you might actually have a reasonable IT department? Or are you a federally qualified health center, a critical access hospital where you really don't have the resource? Because it may very well be that you'll have to rely on others for governance, and that's fine. You write a policy that says, hey, as long as this product comes with a data card telling us how it was developed, a model card, how it works in practice, and we think it's relatively clinically risk-free, then we'll go forward with it. So adjust your governance based on your staffing, your capabilities, your expertise.
And is this where, fantastic, is that where Coalition for Health AI can kind of come into play and give them some guidance there? They engage and learn?
And that's the hope, is that today we don't have a uniform nationwide evaluation criteria for what's trustworthy or good enough. So Coalition for Health AI is 4,000 organizations coming together that said, let us together define what trustworthy means. So therefore, when you see a product that has a data card and a model card and followed the CHI process, you can say, at least I understand what that means and can decide if it's good enough for me.
It's excellent. Excellent. So your organization, your name specifically, your organization came up about how you guys do... you kind of offer offer best practices and services to other facilities and organizations. Talk a little bit about Mayo Clinic and how you guys do that, how your platform does that specifically.
Sure. And so it's so important in this world of predictive and generative AI to have good data sets that are what I call multimodal. That is, it's text, it's images, it's sounds, it's telemetry, it's genomics, it's digital pathology. Many organizations don't have the robust, de-identified, protected data to test AI. So many companies come to us and say, we had almost 1,000 patients. Well, how about trying it on 10 million?
Right.
And so that's the idea, is that it's a studio where companies large and small can test these things out, and we can find real flaws.
Yep. That's fantastic. So thinking beyond today, what do you see as a trend, and put on your crystal ball a little bit, or your crystal hat for the crystal ball, for a trend that we need to navigate in 2 to 3 years from now? What do you think?
So here's an interesting question. The combustion engine was invented, and everyone said, that's really interesting. But it didn't really take off until a car was put around the internal combustion engine.
Yeah.
Well, I think what we're seeing is that we're in that early stage where the tools are starting to show promise, but the application of the tools still needs some vision and imagination. So what you expect next year is we'll probably see some real success stories about what worked, but also what didn't.
Right.
And certainly Mayo is starting to think about, can we start diagnosing disease differently? Can we start creating visualizations of the data differently? Because a 1,200-page chart summarized to a 5-page text blob, it's good, still not so easy.
Right. Excellent. So in a closing minute or so, how about my furry friends at the Unity Farm Sanctuary?
Well, and so it's been an interesting winter, which is we've had a lot of snow.
I know.
But then we've had periods of rain and freezing weather. So what is the worst possible combination is snow with ice on top of it.
Right. Yeah.
So all the animals are good and healthy and fine. Okay. It's just getting ahead of winter has taken more effort this year than ever before.
And how many animals do you rescue now?
So they're about 400.
Okay.
But every day we're getting new requests.
Yeah.
Because when there's economic uncertainty, then people say, can I feed my horse, my cow, my goat?
Yeah.
And we end up being the place that catches some of these societal imperfections.
Right. In Unity Farm Sanctuary, it's a great area to support, help you guys. You guys do a phenomenal job for the community. It's not just, Massachusetts. You guys help all the surrounding area, community of New England, but also I think even beyond that, right, a little bit?
Right. And so although we care for 400 animals every day, in 2024, we are involved in the care of almost 6,000.
Yeah. That's phenomenal. Thank you for all you do, not only for healthcare, but obviously our planet, John. You're an amazing individual. You and Kathy do great work, and always grateful for your time.
Well, always a pleasure. Can't wait to our next conference, and we'll see where the world goes from here.
All right, my friend. Thank you, John.
See you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. I want to say thank you so much to all the staff here on site at ViVE 2025 here in Nashville. Certainly Dan Kendall, the whole team at Health Podcast Network, and Roberta Mullen from Healthcare Now Radio. Everybody's been so fantastic in helping me and supporting me over the last 11 years. And certainly many thanks to AMD, AWS, and all the show partners here for all of their support. And to Rich Scarfo and the entire health team, and obviously ViVE and Chime teams that allow us this opportunity to broadcast every year from their different events. Big thank you to all of them. And certainly a big thank you to all my listeners and supporters. My show broadcasts weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. As always, you can find me on LinkedIn and track me on Twitter, HIT Advisor, and use the hashtag ThisJustinRadio so I can respond to your comments from the show. If you missed any of this episode or anyone want to hear all my broadcasts, they're posted at Apple iTunes, Amazon Music, YouTube, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Spreaker, and anywhere you find your favorite podcast. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.